Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Brandon Gano, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. And today we're talking about something that could potentially ruin your business. And we want to overcome it. That is anxiety. I know a lot of people personally who struggle with anxiety. I know I used to in the past. It's one of those things that left uncontrolled will control you. So we want to figure out how to get past it and how to thrive in our business without anxiety. And I have a very special guest with me today who's going to do just that. And his name is John Graham. John, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Appreciate it, Brandon. Let's do it. Let's help people unlock that and overcome it.
I love it. So you are a 3-time USA memory champion, which we talked a little bit before recording. I want the audience to hear what that is because I think it's the coolest thing ever. And then we're going to dive into anxiety, but I kind of want to see the overlap too. But first and foremost, tell me what a memory champion is and then where your anxiety came from.
Memory champion is someone who learns techniques. Like, I'm not natural at this, by the way, but learns mental visualization, uses techniques like the memory palace to memorize massive amounts of information in a short period of time. And we compete memorizing like decks of cards. Like, I can memorize a deck of cards in 21 and a half seconds just to show you what's possible. Just technique. And we compete in all kinds of events. And I've been the champ last 2 years, but 3 times overall. The anxiety comes, as many people listening, like, it creeps up on you the more you try to ascend in life, because you start getting poked, I like to call it, from all different sources. Like, you're trying to ascend and get to certain levels, and all this stuff inside of you starts getting provoked and coming to the surface, right? And like you said, as an entrepreneur, you are your business. So you can do all the strategy you want, but if you have anxiety, if you procrastinate, if you have apathy in moments, if you shut down like I did, then your business is going to fail because you never take the level of action that you need to. And so people try all this like performative stuff. They try to hack their mind. They try to meditate. They try to do limiting belief work. They try all this mental stuff, supplements, therapy, and it's limiting, right? I tried all that stuff I went to like the best in the world. I had the best mentorship in the entire world, like elite levels, as you can imagine. I performed in front of 400 million people once. Like, I know the mental stuff, and it didn't help me with anxiety. Like, it helped in manage it and kicking the can down the road. Like, oh, I'd clear it and then it'd come back, but it never overcame it. And I like to tell people, what I learned is that anxiety is not a mental issue. Of course, the mind's involved, but the root issue is suppressed emotion. It's an emotional root issue. So when I learned that, I was able to overcome it and release some of the deep suppressed emotions that I had. And that's the real root. And that's what I'm like shouting from the rooftops now, helping people with, is like, let's not maintain it and manage it. Let's overcome it.
Yeah, I am excited to unpack that because I think it's so important to understand. We're all about, as fractional COOs, like, what is the root problem in your business? You can't just put Band-Aids on things and expect it to get better. You need to keep putting Band-Aids on, which is obviously inefficient. So from the emotional and anxiety side, this is really intriguing. But I'm curious for you, like, when did it start to develop? Because you said you've been doing the memory competitions for about 10 years. You've been involved, and you're obviously becoming more and more successful. But as you started to rise through the ranks and get more serious about it, when did the anxiety start popping up for you? And what did it look like at that time?
Yeah, I mean, really intensely back in 2019. So this is fairly recently. And I would wake up training for the world championship. Like, I was probably top 10 in the world. I had that ability. And I woke up excited, but I couldn't train because I had brain fog. So it started manifesting in like brain fog, or like I would mentally freeze up, or I would become overwhelmed, or like I would like shut down from like trying to figure out what to do that day in my business or training, and a lot of fatigue at the end of the day, mental. And I thought it was like, oh, I need a supplement, or I need to work out, or I need, some mindset or whatever, a nap. But it wasn't it. It's a deeper that was anxiety speaking to me. I just didn't know it was anxiety at the time.
That's really interesting because when people say anxiety, I think the common response is like, "Oh, you have physical symptoms like you have panic attacks," something like that. But you're describing things that, quite honestly, I've felt before. I think we've all felt those before. How do you cross that line and realize like, did I get a bad night's sleep, or is this truly some form of anxiety that I don't even know about?
That's a good question. Yeah, anxiety is in a spectrum, right? Brain fog to panic attacks. Like anywhere in between. And I'm not talking about like, oh, you're anxious for a test, right? Everyone has that's a normal emotion. But anxiety, what I experienced is I would wake up feeling like heavy and dread and like worried about the day, or like not looking forward to the things I had to do, and always like trying to plan ahead in my mind to like take care of like emails that I didn't want to take care of, or the day I wanted, I would always like thinking in worst case scenarios, like trying to plan ahead for worst case scenarios, not looking forward to things. And it had physical symptoms, like I said, a heaviness. Sometimes you feel it in your gut. You feel really intense butterflies, or worried for something, or your head is like hot and you're overwhelmed. Those are signs of anxiety.
Hmm, that's really interesting. So then I'm curious to hear your kind of path. Once you got past all of the mental stuff and you realized that wasn't working, and you started to dive into the emotional route.
Mhm.
What did that look like as far as addressing it, finding it first and foremost, probably, and then the path to addressing it and getting over it?
Yeah. Michael Singer wrote The Untethered Soul, which is a fantastic book. It talks about the voice in your head. Um, which is your ego, right? Your mind. Once you understand your mind, you can go deeper, because your mind is a construct. It's based on your life. It's a conditioning, right? It's not you. And I could go on and on about that. But once you understand that, he shared that we all have suppressed emotion. He calls them samskaras, right? That's a Buddhist term, right? I believe. Everything we've ever pushed away in our life, like every moment we couldn't handle. Like if someone was bullying you in third grade, or you were embarrassed in high school for making a mistake on a something, like anything that you didn't handle, that you pushed away, like suppressed or fought, it's still inside you. And so when we get overwhelmed as entrepreneurs, it's not because of your to-do list, it's not because of the emails. It's because the emails and the to-do list are poking those suppressed emotions inside of you from when you were 3, from when you were in third grade, from when you were 15, and they're coming to the surface, and they're intense, and then they swirl in thoughts, right? So learning it's an emotional root issue makes you treat it differently, meaning I devoted myself to locating these and releasing them for good, because when you process out the stuff that's inside of you, it releases, and it releases for good. So you can imagine over time, within a couple weeks, you notice a tremendous difference of lightness, of peace, of presence in your life that you didn't have before.
And can you explain what that looks like? And I don't know if you want to give an example of
Sure.
some real emotions and the path that you went through to release them. But what does that look like? If I were to sit here and want to try to tackle this, what
Mhm.
would I do?
Well, we can't do it through the mind. We can't process an emotion through journaling or through thinking or through reframing, right? So we have to really, really deeply understand your mind is in the way of all of this, which is very, very hard for my clients. Like initially, the first week, that's the hardest thing to overcome. Once you overcome that, you're good. But really, everything that bothers you, Brandon, you or me, and there's a lot, like this will shock you. If you made a list of everything that bothered you in a day, you would be shocked. Like it shocks most of my clients. Those moments of being bothered are portals to suppressed emotions, meaning something's coming up. What do most of us do when something uncomfortable like frustration, anger, anxiety comes up? We avoid it. We escape it. We get our phones, we try to calm down. Like even trying to calm down is avoiding it. Because what I mean, like, what do we need to do? We literally need to let that sensation wash over us, sink into that feeling. But it's so hard and it's so uncomfortable. Because when you do that, you allow it to process out, and it processes out for good. So that conditioned response of like tension and avoiding it in our mind, like trying to feel better. That's a response we don't want. So I tell people this all the time, and it kind of like startles, is like, if you are feeling a negative emotion, one of the worst things you can do, and it's not the worst, but something that you shouldn't do is meditate or calm down or try to feel better. And that's like, what?
It's
What do
like
you
the
mean?
opposite of mainstream
Everyone
advice, right?
tells you to do.
Yeah.
If you do that stuff, you are bypassing the energy and you're basically kicking the can down the road. Like, you'll feel better for a moment, but that can is still going to come back, and it's going to come back louder and louder and louder until you resolve it. So the best thing you can do is release that mind, which is hard. I get it. But to sink into that feeling, let it process out.
When you say process out, what does that mean? Because, well, let me give you, let's do this a real life example. Let's say your name on the screen. If you're listening, I'm sorry, you just have to imagine this. Let's say your last name starts with GR. The R was capitalized, and I know it was just a typo. Let's say it's my fault. Like, that bugs me. That's something that would just irritate me, and I would want to change it. If I let the mind go, I don't calm myself down. How do I let that emotion process over myself?
That's the thing. The emotion is already trying to do what it wants to do. It's just we are the ones tensing up. We are the ones trying to control it. Like, anyone who says you should manage or control your emotions doesn't understand what they're talking about. Like, I used to think that too. What it means is allowing it to happen, which is the hot topic these days, is to let go, to surrender, right? This is literally how to do that. To let and allow that emotion to do whatever it wants to do, which is scary for some.
And what's the process to, okay, so let's say we do let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
How does that correlate to that never happening again? So same thing. If this happens, if I got on the next recording, the next person's name is the same thing. The second letter is capitalized, and I know it's my fault again. Is it a process of continuing to just allow it to happen over time and then it will release? Or is it a one and done?
Sometimes you can do it one and done. Sometimes there's bigger stuff inside of you, as you can imagine. It takes time, right? As far as the letter, I go into this with my clients too. There's an attachment to that R or to that whatever letter. And I'll give you an example. One of the most common attachments, invisible attachments we have, is the attachment to being right or correct. It's why we get mad at politicians. It's why we get mad in relationships. It's why we get mad at all kinds of things. It's because we internally are attached to, I have the right opinion. I am correct here. Like, they are wrong, right? It's because we're living in the mind. The mind sees the duality, right and wrong, good and bad. So if we're living in our mind, we see everything that way, and we're conditioned to see things that way, and we become attached to things. And that conditioning, right, runs everything. We just live through our mind. But our heart doesn't see that. Our heart sees what is. It sees a neutrality. If we can, and here's a deeper aspect, when you're releasing these emotions, you're actually neutralizing heart memories. Because I'm a memory expert. Everyone believes memory is only in the brain and the mind, right? But your heart holds memories. Your heart holds the self-sabotaging patterns and memories, the deeper ones that are causing you to procrastinate, feel apathy, feel anxiety. Because your heart remembers when you were scarred from things, and it holds on to that feeling. That's why you have that visceral feeling. So if we release emotions, we neutralize those feelings in our heart, and we're not inhibited and have these barriers up to protect us or to not feel those things.
Yeah. Now, what about in real time? Because I guess this could be a little bit tough if, let's say, I'm in a conversation with an employee and they say something or do something comes up, and that triggers an anxiety within me, within the listener, whatever. Can you do this in real time? Like, can you sit there and process the emotion, or do you kind of hold on to it until after the conversation and then make space for it? Like, what does that look like?
I mean, you can hold on to it. That's still suppression, right? And containment.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people teach. And that's okay. That's a stage. There's three parts to what I teach, Brandon. So the second part is what I kind of gave you, the unhooking, like how to handle it in the moment and unhook from it without the mind. That's the second stage. The first part and this will answer your question, we have to optimize our nervous system. Meaning, if you have anxiety or any type of this stuff, live in your mind, which is 95% of the population, by the way. We're tense and we have a dysregulated nervous system. We're basically running with our mind. We're always switched on. Like, think of a light switch. Always on, always trying to be productive, always trying to do something, always thinking about something. Your nervous system is out of whack. So we have to learn how to regulate and optimize that nervous system naturally, like without you. Just like your heart pumps blood, you don't pump the blood. You don't go like this, like pump on your chest. If you let go of this tension, of all this control we have that's invisible, our nervous system will optimize itself. And we can handle the voltage of life, right? When your employee does something, when you see R capitalized, all this stuff that comes up, it can handle more of it. Okay, so we need that first. Then we need to learn how to unhook. And to answer your question, there's a third phase here. If you're not able to handle the emotion in the moment, there's what I call catalyst integration, where we have these boulders inside of us, Brandon, as you can imagine from our lives. How do we sit in a space later? I do this 20 minutes a day if needed. Like, I used to do it a ton in the beginning, but now I don't do it as much anymore because I've released a lot. But you can sit on your own without a guide, without a person, without your mind, and release the boulders, the big stuff inside of you, or the moments of the day that you're still holding on to, and process them out for good. When you process them out, you will feel a release. You will feel a neutrality. Your mind will calm down. You will feel like shivers. You might cry a little bit, like something will release, and it will be a profound moment for you.
That's really interesting. And you talk about how you kind of progressed from doing this a lot to now doing it a lot less frequently as you overcome it. Yeah. And sounds like just been more in control of it. But are we continuing to create these scars as we go through our life? And, if so, like, how do we kind of stop it from becoming a scar in the first place? Is that even possible?
Well, that's a really good point, because that's why therapy falls short. Is like, let's say you have a cathartic release, or you release a pattern in therapy. Well, you still go home and you repeat the pattern at home. You keep stuffing down stuff, right? You try to compartmentalize and handle it later. That's why the 3-step process is so important, to handle it in the moment as best as you can, so that we're not continually dumping more and more inside of ourselves, right? So it has to be like, we can't just regulate our nervous system in a 30-minute session. We have to learn how to do it all day as best as we can. We can't just unhook from an emotion in a 20-minute session. We have to learn how to handle it all day long and let it process out, let it release, right? I have a program called Release. And so that's a very important distinction, is we're not just doing this like learning a piano in 30 minutes, 30 minutes a day. We're embodying this so that it becomes a process where it's natural and it's reconditioned, because it's completely counterintuitive to your natural response. Most of us tense and avoid without even realizing it. And we're like a puppet to our emotions, we're like quite literally, and our patterns. This is a reconditioned process to let this stuff happen so that it can process out. Because, like, I'll give you an even more profound example. I was on a show with 400 million people performing a huge memory feat. And people ask me all the time, how do you handle that pressure? And I don't handle it. I don't do anything with it. Because if you try to handle it or control it, it gets stronger. The voice in your head, the feeling, it creates resistance. So you have to not only allow it to happen in that moment, but embrace it. Because if you do that, there's not a resistance. It can process through you like you should. And that's what we want to recondition in people, is like, let's stop avoiding and pushing these down and creating more scars. Let's release it and handle it.
Yeah, I like that frame. And you brought up therapy, which, kind of I know it's totally different, and I'm not comparing it, but I'm curious because I've heard some people go to therapy and, they feel better in the therapist's office, but it's location dependent, right? So you do that work there, always feel good in the therapist's office. Then you go out to the real world and surprise, you feel like crap again. So is it the same kind of practice where you have to, these same the same emotion may come up in multiple different locations, like at work, at home, and you have to kind of treat it in both? Or is it like a, it doesn't matter where you are because you're feeling the emotion, not the Band-Aid?
Exactly. I mean, it's as simple as I'm saying it. Like, get the mind out of the way. Like, allow the mind to do what it wants to do and allow the emotion to do what it wants to do. Therapy, there's two types of therapy. There's cognitive, which is mental therapy, which is question, question, dig, right? That strengthens all these neural pathways we don't want. This is like, why are you worried? What are you worried about? Like, it strengthens those fears, and it's horrible for you. In my opinion, like, there's a stage for it. Understanding a pattern cognitively, there's a stage, there's some benefit to that. But on the deepest level, we have to release it. And so understanding cognitively that R is triggering me doesn't help with the trigger. You still get bothered by it internally. And same thing with, there's a EMDR, there's like emotional based therapy, which is cool. You get these cathartic releases in a 30-minute session. But then you go back home into your life and you're repeating the invisible pattern that's holding it in. So that's why those are limiting. And that's why learning how to handle it on your own, because as you can understand, it's very, very simple. It's just very difficult to retrain that. But those are limiting aspects. Like, therapy is very limiting when you're trying to really release the root.
Yeah, this is fascinating, John. I really appreciate you coming here and unpacking this a little bit. I'm sure, you can go miles deep on this stuff, and you probably should to really get to the root cause of things. But you have an offer for the audience. You have let me put it on the screen here. Talk to me about that real quick before I let you go.
Yeah, I have an 8-week transformational process to release these boulders for good, to transmute them into your highest potential, like literally hold the capacity of your highest potential, these invisible qualities. But if you want to get started, go to releasepanic.com/free. I have a video that talks about this emotional root issue and how you can get started to release these boulders inside and to make this transition either on your own or with some guidance, right? And it puts you on my email list so you can get more updates too. But as you can understand, it completely flips the script of what we're told, that it's not mental health and mental performance. It's emotional root issue.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. It's on the screen here. That website is also releasepanic.com/free, down in the show notes, wherever you're watching and listening. John, I really appreciate you being here and sharing this. I think the way you describe it, it seems like it's a lot more prominent than I think we even know and realize. And it may be something that all of us are dealing with on some level that we should probably check out. You're nodding your head like, hey, dummy, you finally figured out. Yeah, loud and clear.
No,
Thank you. Appreciate
100%.
that.
We're all subject to suppressed emotions and conditioning. If you're a human being and you got blood pumping, yes, 100%. But
most of our audience is made up of human beings, so we should all go check that out. No, John, but I love to end the episodes with a question from you to the listener. We believe that powerful questions get powerful answers, and in terms of tackling this and getting to that next level in your life and releasing the barriers of what's holding you back potentially. What is a powerful question that the listener should ask themselves in the context of this conversation until they get that powerful answer?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's more of, and maybe not a question. I'm trying to frame this into a question. Why are you bothered by so many things? And it's a deep, deep question. Like, it's not a blame question. It's not like you're stupid. But if you really ask, why am I not okay on the inside? That's a better question. You start getting these answers that I found. That's emotional root. Where does this come from? So why am I not okay on the inside? Sit with that question. You'll get a deeper answer.
I don't want to sit with that question. That's a little too powerful of a question for me. My wife asks me that all the time. Why are you bothered by so many things? So maybe I should answer it. I think that's a good inclination for me. I appreciate that question, John. I hope you take that and you sit on that as the listener, because that is going to open some doors for you. And it's on the screen, releasepanic.com/free. Wherever you're watching and listening, I appreciate you being here. Make sure you subscribe and rate the show. We'd love to hear your feedback. Do you love episodes like this? Do you want more business? Do you want more mindset? Do you want more health? I want to know. We want to put on a better show for you. We'll see you on the next episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.